Well, good morning. Welcome to ChessBase Workshop. My name is Steve Lopez. Thank you for clicking on the link and joining me today. It is morning here, by the way. It's early, and I'm still trying to pry my eyelids open. And this is a pretty informal presentation. Those of you who have been with me and with ChessBase for a long time know that I'm fairly informal. You remember my old articles. They were full of jokes and one-liners and punchlines, and I just had fun with it. And the videos are very informal as well. I don't work from a script. I just do this off the top of my head, extemporaneously, if you will. So I'm just sitting here talking about ChessBase with you, and as I said, it's early. I'm prying my eyelids open, and I have a big old cup of coffee right here, and I may slurp once in a while. So please do forgive me if I pause occasionally for a sip of coffee, but it is very early. In fact, I believe I'll have one now. Oh, that's hot. In ChessBase, one of the beauties of this software, and it's been this way for a long time, is there's often more than one way to skin a cat. There's often more than one way to perform a function, to do something that you're trying to do in the software. It's a cool thing, absolutely, that you have multiple ways to tackle a problem, but what it does, it makes the learning curve a little bit steep for some people. That's why I've been doing articles and videos for nearly 20 years now, is because, and there's features in the software I still haven't covered yet. I still haven't gone to yet. I haven't done an article or a video on. It's just to show you, try to ease that learning curve and show you how to use it. Today we're going to talk about two different ways to do player searches, and there's a method to the madness here. There's a reason why I'm going over this again for the umpteenth time, and the reason is because I've learned something myself about the software that I was not aware of 24 hours ago. So I want to go in and show you a couple of things. Excuse me. Back in the day, when I was doing articles and I was writing an article about how to do a player search, I would tend to use players from the golden age of chess, from the 1930s and earlier, to illustrate my player searches. And the reason why was there were an awful lot of players at that time that had these magnificently unusual names. And you could do a search for a particular player and come up with a name that was not going to be duplicated in a database. Now, way back when, in the early 1990s, 1992, when I started with ChessBase, the biggest database you could put together was 125,000 to 150,000 games, probably closer to 125,000. And there's been a data explosion. The internet's been part of that, of course. People can play a chess tournament and have those games up online within minutes of the end of a tournament, practically. So there's a lot more data floating around out there, and consequently now the mega database that ChessBase offers is over 4.75 million games on a DVD. And of course, that's not even complete anymore. More games have been played. Of course, with ChessBase, you can click on new games down here and pull in games that have been uploaded to the internet. Of course, you can go out there and find a ton of games yourself and add them to your database. So there's millions of games. Consequently, there are going to be certain names that are no longer as unusual as they once were. And that's what led me to make this the topic of today's ChessBase workshop. I want to show you two different ways to do player searches in ChessBase 11, to show you how to get just what you want, just the information that you need. The first one I'm sure you're familiar with. We have done this a zillion times in articles and videos down through the years, where we right-click on a database's icon and we select search, and we can do a player search. Karpov. Ignore colors. We want all of his games. We click OK. And we're going to try to find the games of Anatoly Karpov. And what we have here, first of all, I need to back up for a moment and do something, and I will explain what I'm doing here in just a moment. The default for player first names is one letter, a single letter. So what you're looking at in this search result is all the games of Karpov, anybody named Karpov. Okay? We have, if we scroll down here, we have 4,580 games. And we're seeing a ton of A. Karpovs. We click white to sort the list by the name of the white players, player of the white pieces. We scroll down. We get to the K's. There's A. Karpov. Whole bunch of those. By the way, we also wound up with a Karpovich and a bunch of Karpovas, which is interesting. So what you want to do, and there's a V Karpov. So what you typically want to do then is refine your search. So it's generally a good idea to go in and put in A Karpov, first letter. Click OK. Wait for it to get done. Now we have 4,166 games. So it's whittled it down some. We click on the white to sort the list by the names of the players of the white pieces. We come down here and there's a bunch of A Karpovs, which should get rid of the V Karpovs, which is all well and good. But I want to show you something. If you right click in a game list, you get a menu that pops up. We were looking at this just a moment ago. If you go to list format, you get another menu that comes up over to the side here, and there is a little section that says abbreviate first name. Click on that command, and what it does, it allows you to designate the number of letters of a player's first name that will appear in the game list. This is important. The default is 1. You generally want to set it higher, and I'll show you why. We're going to go to, let's make it 4. Click OK. Of course, this happens instantaneously. It doesn't have to do a search. It's already found the games. We scroll down the list, and we come up with Alex Karpov. What the hex? Who is Alex Karpov? Well, I've known about this fellow for quite a while. His name is Alexander Karpov. So if you do a search for A Karpov, you're going to get Alexander Karpov and Anatoly Karpov. So the way to be absolutely certain that you're getting only the person that you want, and notice here that we have, again in this database, oh, that's right, I resorted it. Let's go back to number. Sorry. Go back down here. We got 4,166 games. Let's go back and do a search a third time. Search ANAT for Anatoly and click OK. A moment later, the search is done. We scroll down to the bottom of the list, and now we have 3,724 games instead of our former number, which was close to 1,000 more, about 800 more games. Click white, scroll down, and we have Anatoly Karpov. We have gotten the guy we want. So if you're going to do a player search by right-clicking on Mega Database 2011 and clicking search, make sure that when you put the last name in, of course it's last name in the left side, last name first, first name last, after the little comma, first name. Put in some extra letters. Put in some extra letters. Don't just go by first initial, because that doesn't always work. There's another way to do these searches, by the way. I'm going to show it to you now. This is interesting. Double click on Mega Database 2011, or whatever database you're using. And what you have is the game list. And you have a bunch of tabs across the top: text, games, players, tournaments, annotators, sources, etc., etc. If you click on players, what you get is an alphabetical list of the players in the database. What you get at the top of the list, by the way, is you get some moves. That's actually perfectly natural, because there are some surveys, there are some opening theoreticals in the Mega Database, and that's generally how opening theoreticals are designated, is by a string of moves. In fact, if you click on this and go over here, you look that this is an opening survey from ChessBase magazine number 66. Okay, so it used to be, this was a very primitive resource at one time, a primitive feature. Because what you had to do was just scroll up and down in the game list at one time, just try to find who you wanted. And that's rather time consuming, especially in a database that has more than 4 million games, because you've got thousands of players in here. Excuse me, I just had another sip of coffee. Well, I hear from people from time to time, well, how do you search it? At one time you couldn't really. It wasn't easily done. Back in the old DOS days, we had a utility that would create this, and it didn't make a searchable index. This is called the player index, by the way, or the player key. These are keys. These are different keys, and all keys are are indices. I was going to say indexes, but somebody who's a Latin scholar would call me up a right to be and call me an idiot. Indices, or indexes, for those of us who are barbarians that don't speak Latin. It's an index of players. That's all it is. That's all a key is. A key is an index. So this is a player index. It is searchable, but you got to search for the search feature. Look around on the screen. The sharp-eyed have already spotted it. Way down here in the lower left side of the screen, there is a little box that says search. Here's what I want to show you. Back in the day, this is why I brought this up before, back in the day when I wrote articles on different players and doing player searches and whatnot, I would always use, not always, but frequently, I would use Capablanca or Alekhine as the name. I can type in Capa, or I can type in the full name Capablanca. It doesn't matter which, but we can look for Capablanca. All right? And look what we come across. I used to do Capablanca searches, no problem, and just pull up the games of Jose Raul Capablanca, who was the world champion in the early 1920s. I'm sure you're familiar with the man. You've heard the name. But check it out. We have more than one Capablanca entry in the player index. You have a bunch down here that show two names. And we'll make this a little bit wider. These are consultation games where Capablanca played as a team with another player, Hans Kmuch, or Richard Rady, or Tartakover. These games were wildly popular back in the 1920s and 30s, and even into the 40s and 50s. And you don't see it very much anymore. You don't see a lot of consultation games, which is kind of sad because it was a neat way to play. It was basically 4-player chess, 2 white players, 2 black players, and the 2 white players consulted on the moves. There were different ways to do it. They would either discuss a move, or to make it more interesting, they would take turns making a move and not be allowed to talk to each other. So, for example, Capablanca and Rady might be on a team, and Capa would make the first move, and then one of the opponents would make the black move, and then Rady would make the second move, and then Capa would make the third move, Rady would make the fourth move, and they wouldn't be allowed to talk to each other, and wild things would happen. But they don't do consultation games very much anymore. That's not what I wanted to call your attention to, though. There are 2 Capablancas, and they both start with J, of course. That's the way it always begins, the way it always happens. Capablanca, Jose Raul Capablanca, 1,196 games. But in 2001, and I hope I get this name correctly, a fellow from Brazil named Wanilton Capablanca played 4 games in an event in Salvador. A big open tournament, apparently, because he has 4 games. If you click on his name, of course, if you click on the Capablanca, Jose Raul Capablanca, you get his games right here. And, of course, the tournaments and events he participated in this pane. And as I said, at one time you didn't get this information. You would just get a list of players. So now there's more information here, and it makes it a more useful tool. But if you click on Wanilton Capablanca, you get the 4 games over here listed, and the 1 event that these games came from. And what I found interesting about this, I thought was cool, was he's an unrated player, playing apparently in a large open event, and he goes 2-2. There's no shame in that. If you're an unrated player playing in your first open, there's no shame in going 2-2. I wish I'd done that well in my first big open that I'd played in. I won't tell you what that score was because it's a matter of some embarrassment personally to me. So I will keep that information to myself. Thank you. But here's 4 games by Wanilton Capablanca. So if you want to do a search for Capablanca's games, you want to make sure you get the right guy. So this is a good way to do it. It saves you a little typing in the search mask. You don't have to type back Capablanca's entire name. In fact, if we go back up to the top here and erase what I've done down here in the search box, all you have to do is type in a few letters, C-A-P-A, and it takes us to all the names that begin with C-A-P-A, and then we can narrow it down. Of course, since Capablanca is the first name that begins with C-A-P-A, it doesn't really make any difference what else I type here. But if I wanted to find, a different player, let's say, Caparole, I could type in an R, and we have Capard, Caparole, Caparros. Okay, so we take away the R, and then we go back to Capablanca up here at the top. See, it's pretty cool how that works. So watch that search box down there. Type in just a few letters, and you get names that begin with that string. But what we have found is that there's more than one Capablanca. So we can't count on just using Capablanca as a sample search anymore. Even J Capablanca won't do it. Even J-O Capablanca won't do it in the search mask. You would have to type in J-O-S to get these games. That's why I say type in 4, maybe 5 letters of the first name of the player if you're going to use the search mask. But this is a way to be absolutely sure that you're getting the right person. Excuse me, when you do a search. Instead of doing it in the search mask, you come to the player index, the player key, use the search box down here, and it allows you just to pick out exactly who you want. But, I hear you saying, but, I can hear it. What if you want just the white games of that player? ChessBase 11 has you covered. Click on the guy you want, Jose Raul Capablanca, former world champion. That's why under title it says WC. World champion GM. If you just leave it WC, some English person may think it's water closet, and that would not be nice. You have all of his games over here, but if you want to narrow it down to just his games as white, there's a button up here for that. Search white games. Click on that button, and there's just his games as white. Note that if you decide you want to go to games as black, you don't have to do another search. The games as black are still here. They're just covered up so you can't see them. They're just omitted from the list. If you go up here and click search black games, there's Kappa's games as black. So this is a neat way to do player searches that allows you to get just the information that you want. It's also very handy, for example, if you don't know how to spell a player's first name. This is particularly a case with Russian, Eastern European last names that use the Cyrillic alphabet. For example, Alexei could be A-L-E-X-I, A-L-E-X-Y, A-L-E-X-E-I, etc. And there's no real way to know for sure how that name is spelled in a particular database. If you're using a ChessBase database, if you're using a database from another commercial source, if you're using a database you've downloaded from the internet, games you've downloaded and compiled into a database yourself, you don't know for sure how they're going to spell the name, and especially because there are people today that can't spell their way out of a wet paper bag, they may not be spelling the name properly anyway. So this is a good way, if you don't know exactly how to spell the first name, or if you want to make absolutely sure you're getting the person that you want, you can type in some letters and get the name. The other thing that helps you with this as well in getting just the player that you want is there's more information than just the name over on the left side of the screen here. You've got the ELO rating of the player for players where ELO ratings are available. Of course, Capablanca, there was no ELO rating. That was not being used at that time. But the title, the country they're from, there's the Cuban flag, there's a little photo there, date of birth, and there's more. You can scroll over a little bit, and you get their death date as well. That helps you find who you want. This information, if you get two players with identical or similar names, you can differentiate them sometimes by this information up here, by ELO rating or by title, what have you. So there you go. That's a really good way to find just the information that you want in ChessBase. For many, many cases, just the search mask that we used back at the beginning of this video, that'll be sufficient in a lot of cases. Particularly if you're using a database of your own games and you're looking up this guy that you played in a tournament back in '95 and you remember his last name, you can type it in and pull that game up. But when you're doing a database search of a huge database of games of a ton of players from around the world, sometimes it's beneficial to come in, take the extra step to go to the player key, use the search box at the bottom, and pull up just the person that you want to get absolutely sure you're getting only the information that you want. You're not getting some extra results. Once you have this information, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? Well, that's something for the next ChessBase workshop. We'll look at that next time around. Till then, please have fun.